This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
This is one of the best college football slates in recent memory. Not only do we have Ohio State and Oregon, a Big Ten matchup for, at least a very fun Big Ten matchup out west. It's very weird to say that still, but also we have got the Red River Showdown, Texas and Oklahoma. Texas now the number one team in the nation. Another fun game, Ole Miss versus LSU, all on tap for this weekend. Today, we're going to break down those three key games, outline some bets you can like in those over at FanDuel Sportsbook, and just talk about the best bets across week 7 by talking to the Power Ranks Dr. Ed Feng and picking his brain on week number 7. This is Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as mentioned by Dr. Ed Feng. You can find his work at thepowerrank.com. Check him out on X at thepowerrank. Ed, you got the Detroit Tigers hat going on today. We got a big slate in college football coming up, so pretty fun time for you, I assume. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. It is fun to be back with you. Did have to take a little bit of break from the Tigers game, but not a problem at all. I'm always down to talk some college football.
I feel like you, as someone who appreciates ingenuity, appreciates innovation, probably have to be pretty pumped about the Tigers, the weird way they're using their pitching staff in this postseason. I feel like you, as a critical thinking fan, have to appreciate everything that they're doing this postseason.
I'm still trying to figure out exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. I guess there's some of the left-right batter matchups that are working. Maybe I'll have this down by the end of the series or tomorrow, or maybe the end of the day. We'll see.
Maybe by the end of the championship series. We'll give you extra time, hopefully, to try to sort all that out. Good luck to you. Good luck to the Tigers fans and backers out there as well. As mentioned for today, big show on tap. So we're going to break down week 7 in college football. We'll talk about Texas, Oklahoma first, then Ohio State, Oregon, Ole Miss versus LSU, and should be a banger of a slate across college football. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Tomorrow, breaking down NFL week number 6 with Dubs Anderson of FanDuel TV, breaking out his best bets for this week's biggest games over there. Also talking some Detroit there. We've got the Lions and the Cowboys coming up on Sunday. Then Friday, Annie Nader will join us to break down her best player props across the NFL as well. That is on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, but also on our brand new YouTube page where you can find our Covering the Spread and Heat Check podcast. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern will be our DFS breakdown for the week 6 main slate. And then the NFL best bet show at Dubs will be at 4 p.m. Eastern. Again, right there on the brand new YouTube page. If you're watching there, hit subscribe, but also leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you who have done so already. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, all customers or new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager, only $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Arizona, DC, Iowa, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, Vermont, Virginia, and West Virginia and Wyoming. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chad in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Ed, we haven't had you on the show here for about a month, so I want to go back with you through college football season, because we've talked before about changes to your college football betting model. You, a couple years ago, made the shift to make that thing be more reactive to more recent data and kind of evolve more quickly. So I want to kind of check in. How have things changed this year for you, if at all, based on systemic changes you've noticed this year in college football?
Well, one change is that I've gotten hot the last 3 weeks. So I usually
That's good.
I write up a bet. I mean, I usually do more NFL, but I write up a college football bet for my members and have hit every single one the last 3 weeks. Got a little bit lucky with Notre Dame over Louisville 2 weeks ago, but Ole Miss over South Carolina was pretty solid this past week. So getting lucky is definitely a highly recommended way. I got members asking me for more. And so I provided more this week. So number one, get lucky. And then the models really haven't changed in terms of how I spreads, how I predict totals. But I am getting more into assessing some player stats, looking into the play-by-play to break things down by particular quarterback, particular running back. We'll talk a little bit about that with Texas in particular. I was a little surprised at some of Arch Manning's numbers. So digging into the data for that, being a little bit more aware of how different players perform. And then, even getting into some bad ball analysis for college football.
Oh,
yeah. So this started happening with the Michigan quarterback situation.
Yeah.
Davis Warren started the season. I thought he looked particularly good. Unfortunately, he missed 3 throws in Arkansas State, and each one of them ended up going to the other team. He got benched because of that. Usually, I've talked a lot about the bad ball analysis, but I look at both like interceptions and then passes defended. In both the NFL, you usually get about 1 pick to about 4 passes defended. That's the ratio. And so that ratio should be about the same for every quarterback, right? It's like quarterbacks don't control how often you put the ball in danger, and that's really the skill. They do control how often you put the ball in danger. That's the true skill that we're trying to get at with this bad ball rate. But once you put it once you put the football in danger, how many of those end up being picks is completely random. So for Davis Warren, instead of like 1 pick to 4 passes defended, he had like 6 picks and 5 passes defended through those first 3 games. So instead of a 20% ratio, he had like a 50% ratio. So
yeah.
Had they left him in there, I think he would have done a lot better. He did not get that opportunity because that's how sports work. Alex Orji got the job. It's pretty clear that Alex Orji is not good at throwing the football. And then Michigan brought in Jack Tuttle this last week against Washington. I really do think that Tuttle is going to be the quarterback going ahead. A lot of his passing numbers look pretty good, obviously in a small sample size with 1 game. But he also gives you something with his legs as well. And I think he's a pretty good combination of both Davis Warren and Alex Orji. So I think he will eventually be Michigan's quarterback. I think Michigan will be good. They will not make the college football playoff. It's definitely a little bit down from last year. But those are the types of things I'm doing with college football data this year.
Now, with the bad ball ratio, are you using that? Because like I've had trouble finding interception props as often in college football as you would in the NFL. Are you using that to try to identify teams that may regress positively or negatively, or what's the kind of main thought process for you in integrating bad ball data for college?
Well, first, it was pissing off people that wanted to see Alex Orji be the quarterback. And that was definitely the prime reason. And weirdly, Jim, I found plenty of people on social media that wanted to engage with me about that and tell me that Davis Warren wasn't any good. Poor kid. I'm gonna have to like 3D print him a statue or something for
fan club. Yeah, exactly.
No, but just like, we want to see what quarterbacks are getting lucky out there, right? Which quarterbacks are not getting lucky, who have gotten unlucky in that when they do make a mistake throwing the football, and even Tom Brady makes mistakes throwing the football when it's actually going to the other team. And I'm looking at a point in the very near future where, when we're looking at 12 playoff teams, I'm going to have every quarterback, and not only their success rate, but bad ball rate. And so that's the idea. Yeah. I mean, it's more in terms of analysis. Honestly, Jim, the bad ball stuff is actually not in my NFL predictions, and I've been meaning for a while to just take an estimate, because when you have like a Patrick Mahomes versus Will Levis, like that should be in the point spread.
Sure.
And then Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just another tool in the handicapping for now. It's not necessarily the bet college football picks, although that would be fun. I should mention, man, like I gotta shut up about this stuff sometimes because like the NFL pick market has completely changed. I would say 95% of my bets were on over a half interception last year, and those are all gone. So there's like nothing. Everything's been a little bit of unders on Matthew Stafford and Patrick Mahomes this year. But like the days where you could get like Joe Burrow plus 150 over a half interception. I mean, the books basically figured out these things should be priced close to 50-50 and not give you a lot of that plus money to go over a half interception.
And I will keep going back to the Mahomes unders because eventually that will regulate itself. Things will normalize. He'll stop having these weird brain fart moments. It's not going to keep happening forever. I will keep going back to those unders with you, despite what's happened so far.
Monday night was particularly frustrating. I definitely had Mahomes under because the price, I think it was plus money. I think I got plus.
You didn't project a defensive tackle to catch a ball off of Juju Smith-Schuster's hands in the end zone?
Nope, I did not. And the thing is, like, I mean, I watched the entire first half of that game and I was like, this is perfect. He hasn't thrown the ball anywhere close to the other team,
right? Which
is what you expect from Patrick Mahomes. Like that is his ability. And then I wasn't watching like the first part of the third quarter. I was like, geez, what the heck happened? And then I saw what happened, and that
made it way worse, I'm sure.
That was the only bad ball of the entire game. So he did not actually put the football anywhere near the Saints defense the entire night.
Correct. He put it near Juju Smith-Schuster's hands, which was fine most of the night, but was not fine in that specific play. So bad beat there from Mahomes. But like I said, I'll be going back regardless because I think the process there is right when they come out of their bye. Now, you mentioned you're integrating individual quarterback data, and that's pertinent for our first game of this week. That is Texas taking on Oklahoma, the Red River Showdown. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Texas favored by 14.5, and the total in this game is 50.5. Now, Oklahoma, lone loss so far, wasn't a bad loss to Tennessee, but Texas getting Quinn Ewers back for this one. So how do you see things playing out here, Ed?
Right. I mean, this was an interesting opportunity to look in the play-by-play data and get some raw passing success numbers for Arch Manning versus Quinn Ewers. The idea was that Arch Manning wasn't necessarily ready. I watched a little bit of the Louisiana Monroe game, and he had thrown a pick. And I was like, okay, well, I'm sure he's raw. But, I mean, when you break it down, his passing success rate is 52.4%. I mean, that's excellent. The college football average is closer to 40%. He did have the 2 picks against Louisiana Monroe, but Quinn Ewers has been slightly better, 55% passing success rate for the season. Also a mix of, good competition against Michigan. Arch Manning played against Mississippi State. Maybe not the best competition there, but Quinn Ewers had a couple cupcakes in there as well. He's also thrown 2 picks. So, it looks pretty similar. Arch had some better yards per pass attempt numbers. I wasn't able to get exact numbers because I just didn't go back and subtract out the sack yards, and my code doesn't quite do that yet. But look, they got 2 pretty good options there. And this Texas is a really good team. I'm not necessarily sure they're quite as good as we think they are right now. And that's not only because I had Texas as one of my 3 overrated college football teams at the beginning of the season. Part of that analysis was like, look, last year they exceeded their 4-year program average so much that you can expect regression from that. I do think we're going to see regression from that. It hasn't necessarily happened yet, but when they did go to Michigan, when you looked at the underlying statistics, that game should have been closer than it was, particularly when you looked at success rate. Texas certainly deserved to win that game, but they were able to break a couple big plays. Turnovers definitely helped as well. I don't really see, much of competition here against Oklahoma. Oklahoma's offense has been a mess. They're 111th when I look at success rate adjusted for opponents. The defense is good. They're 32nd in adjusted success rate, but maybe, not quite as good as you would expect a Brent Venables program to be. They should not have beaten Auburn and Houston. Those were 2 games that they won, 2 one-score games that they won, but in the underlying metrics, they were worse than those 2 teams. They're 4-1, but rightfully 2-touchdown underdog. I don't really have anything in this game spread-wise. I do think Texas rolls on. But I do think it's, I think we're seeing the better side of Texas, and I think they're going to regress a little bit. We'll see how much and whether that impacts them. You have a really interesting situation in the SEC where, Georgia's got a loss. Alabama somehow managed to lose to Vandy last week, which is just great for football.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what kind of case, how many SEC teams are going to actually make the playoff. And it's going to be really interesting.
It definitely is. And I want to go back to the Oklahoma side of things. You mentioned Oklahoma's not where we expected Brent Venables' defense to be yet. They are so much better than they were his first year there. So they've definitely made gains in the time that he's been there. How close are they to kind of being where you think they can be long-term with Venables? Have they made improvements this year? How do things grade out for them as far as hope projecting forward for that defensive side of the football?
Right. I mean, they were 8th last year, so they had certainly advanced. I mean, that was a pretty good football team. They had Dylan Gabriel at quarterback last year, did a lot of good things. I haven't quite dug into exactly why they're not quite as good this year. But, it's still early in the season, right? I mean, we're through 6 weeks of data. This is when you start to trust my adjusted numbers, and they look a little bit more reasonable every week. So we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe they'll have a great performance this week. Who knows?
All right. So no betting value for Texas versus Oklahoma, but Ed does expect Texas to play pretty well in this one. Let's go from Dylan Gabriel's old team to his new team in the big game of the week. That is Ohio State at Oregon right now, FanDuel Sportsbook. Ohio State 3.5-point favorites on the road. Total in this game is 52.5. Both these teams, Zed, have lived up to the hype so far. So, going to keep it simple here. Who you got for Ohio State versus Oregon?
Right. I think this is obviously going to be a great game. I have Ohio State by 2.7 points here. So when I posted that number for members on Sunday, this was Oregon was plus 4.5. I thought there was a little bit of value there. The market has moved, so I think this is pretty fair right now. I really do think that so the most terrifying thing about this game is how good Michigan State has actually played both of these teams. They lost to both of these teams, but in the underlying metrics, like in terms of success rate, they were competitive. And so as a Michigan fan, I don't particularly like that. So, like what seemed like an easy game against Sparty at the beginning of the year, I think is going to be anything but an easy game in a rivalry. But look, I mean, so Oregon, they haven't particularly looked good. They haven't really impressed on the scoreboard, particularly when you beat an Idaho team by 10 points. That doesn't look good. But their underlying metrics look a lot better. They're 12th in offense when I look at adjusted success rate, 15th on defense. This is a very good football team. Dylan Gabriel is the quarterback, the best quarterback that money could buy in the transfer portal. And so he is there. He did throw 2 red zone picks against Michigan State, although they did end up pulling away in that game. I think he can be better in this game. And then when you look at Ohio State, like this was definitely a unit, like the offense was a unit that I had some questions and marks. Bringing in a transfer quarterback in Will Howard that was going to lose his job at Kansas State because Avery Johnson is a freak of nature and a really good quarterback. They brought him in, but so far everything looks really good. They're 3rd in my adjusted success rate. Really good, both passing and throwing the ball. It helps to have complete studs like Emeka Buka and Jeremiah Smith. Both these guys are in excess of 3.5 yards per route run. Anything above 3 is good. You do look, I mean, the Ohio State receiver room is so good that like they just kick guys out. So Julian Fleming was someone who had a lot of targets last year, but wasn't particularly effective, had actually less than a yard per route run last year. So he gets booted out. He's at Penn State now. This has happened before, with guys like Jameson Williams. Will Howard is throwing to a pretty good set of receivers. I do think they're going to be effective. In the run game, Travion Henderson was a big part of how Ohio State was able to kind of surge later in the season. He came back from an injury. He actually I don't think I had Ohio State as a favorite, but I had Ohio State spread wise against Michigan at Michigan. And a lot of that was like what Travion Henderson was doing, running the football, the effectiveness, the efficiency with which he was doing that. You expect him to be the man this season, but they've actually given more carries to Quinshon Judkins, who is the transfer from Ole Miss. He's got 60 carries to 42 for Travion Henderson. They're both racking up 7.8 yards per carry. So, Chip Kelly's doing a pretty good job there running that offense. And then the defense is also really good too. 12th in my adjusted success rate. A lot of health. A lot of all their guys not seeing any injuries on that side of the ball. So overall, like really a fantastic game, and no spread bet for me, but I'm going to enjoy watching it.
The total in this game is 52.5. The Ohio State defense, as you said, has played pretty well. Oregon hasn't quite hit their stride as of yet. Any interest for you in the total for this one?
Yeah, I would definitely lean towards the over. I mean, my model has the over, and I think the offenses are slightly better units, so I don't see any reason why you should expect less than the college football average of about 56 points. So definitely lean on the over for me.
The over right now, 52.5 is minus 115 at FanDuel Sportsbook here. That's the one bet. We're at the same value as Ohio State takes on Oregon, but again, should be a really fun game out on Saturday in Oregon. Let's finish up now by talking about Ole Miss at LSU right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Ole Miss favored by 3.5. Total in this game is 63.5. And interesting game here, and this game is made more interesting by the fact we've got this 12-team playoff for this year because both these teams are in contention for that. So that's kind of the bonus of this new format for this year. LSU, not a lot of tests for them since that loss to USC back in week 1. They're not 3.5-point home underdogs to Ole Miss. So any bets stand out to you in this one, Ed?
Yeah, I would really love to bet Ole Miss. Unfortunately, my model only has them by about 3 on the road in this game. I actually really like this Ole Miss team. I mentioned that I had them last week in a bounce back game over South Carolina on the road. That was fun and easy. I think this is a really good team, starting with quarterback Jackson Dart, the offense. They're 14th in my adjusted success rate. Definitely a good mark for the offense. And then they're even better on defense. They're second in my adjusted success rate. That kind of agreed with Bud Elliott, who liked South Carolina under 21.5 points. And I think this is a really good football team, and I would like to see them make the playoff, right? This was a program that came in with high expectations. They had all the transfers that were coming in from big major programs. Now, when you look at LSU, they're doing just like they're not doing quite as well as they were doing last year on offense, but it's pretty decent. They're 13th in my adjusted success rate. But I really have no idea what the hell's going on the other side of the football because their defense is atrocious again. They're 84th. And when you are at LSU, like, you just shouldn't have a defense that's that bad. Although I guess Les Miles had an offense that was probably the equivalent of that for a long time there, right? It is a place where you should be able to recruit talent, and then you should be able to manage that talent to a pretty good level. But, we're just not seeing it on that side of the ball. They got studs like Harold Perkins that, according to PFF grades, have just been kind of a dud this year. And so for that, they're a home dog against Ole Miss. Like a program that probably doesn't have the resources that an LSU does. But so yeah, no value here for me. I do think it's a pretty interesting matchup. And when you look at how bad the LSU defense is, it's kind of like I just don't see them making a playoff run. I just don't see it for them.
And that could take a serious hit this week, too, if they do, in fact, lose to Ole Miss, which is what your numbers say. How's happening here? Total 63.5. Obviously, the LSU defense underwhelming once again. We got 2, I would say, NFL caliber quarterbacks in this game as well. What's your read on the total at 63.5?
Yeah, interesting. I actually hadn't looked at it, but, my model does have about 72. So definitely on the over there. You can definitely see that in terms of because of how bad LSU's defense. So you actually think of Garrett Nussmeier as an NFL prospect?
I've seen people I respect start to mention his name, is the way that I would say it. People whose opinions I expect, they've started to at least mention him in passing, and that has gotten my attention. So maybe not like a top end guy, but it does seem like he has the interest of some people who are pretty good at the scouting side of things.
All right, noted.
All right, so we're taking a look at there at Ole Miss versus LSU. Interest in the over from Ed, that is 63.5 minus 110 on that one. All right, Ed, plenty of other good games across week number 7. Any other spots where you see value this week at FanDuel Sportsbook?
Yeah, one game that particularly interests me is Washington at Iowa. Washington was supposed to be in rebuild mode. Every single starter on offense left from the national championship game team from last year. Kalen DeBoer left. No Michael Penix Jr., no trio of NFL caliber receivers. A lot of the offensive line transferred out. Like no one. Jed Fish comes in and, everyone's like, look, this is a complete rebuild job. They're going to be terrible year one, and then we'll go from there. And they're not terrible. I apologize. I lost my notes, so I don't know exactly where they stand in all my numbers. But, the offense has been, I think, top 10 type caliber good. And their defense has kind of held serve from where they were last year, somewhere in the 30s and the 40s. And it's just, it's unbelievable. Like, I mean, they have 2 losses to Washington State and Rutgers, and they should not have lost either one of those games. And so this Washington team has been a complete surprise. When I look at Iowa, they are much better than last year on the offensive side of the ball. And, that means like scoring double-digit points in games that matter. And they're better, but when I look at some of my adjusted numbers, they're not. They're still pretty bad when you look at this offense led by Cade McNamara. They're really feasting on big plays from the running back. I think Caleb Johnson. This is what happens when I don't have my notes. Anyway, I think there's the offense isn't going to be quite as good. The defense doesn't look great in my numbers, but they get the benefit of the doubt on that side of the ball. So anyways, my model has Iowa by like a half point in this game. I think there's some value in Washington plus 2.5. And money line at plus 118 sounds like a pretty good idea for me as well.
Yeah, if you watch Iowa, you can kind of see that success rate issue pop up because it is, like you said, dependent on big plays. And big plays are one thing, but if it's like an explosive quarterback and stuff like that, but big plays because your running back bounces off 16 guys, maybe Caleb Johnson is just that good, but I'd have a hard time projecting that to stick going forward. And I think that sounds like that's kind of where you settle in with them as well.
Yeah, exactly. Caleb Johnson, thank you for getting that right. He has 14 carries of 20 or more yards.
Pretty good, really but good. Also potentially not sustainable. So
probably not sustainable.
Yes, liking the Washington money line plus 118 or Washington plus 2.5 minus 104 if you want to take the points in what could be a low scoring game. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. Want to give a big thank you to Ed once again. Find Ed on X at the Power Rank. Ed, what is going on for you this week over at thepowerrank.com?
I'm writing my free sports betting email newsletter. I come out with 5 nuggets Saturday every weekend, and the promise is if you're looking to bet on something, you can find that in that newsletter. It's not just my stuff, it's from other people as well, so check that out at thepowerrank.com. I also run the Football Analytics Show podcast. Had Jim on to talk about motorsports and other interesting things. I had Edward Egros on this week. I had Bob Stoll on the week before to talk college football. Had Fabian Sumer to talk NFL. Try to get a lot of interesting guests. And now kind of like this show, I keep it to half an hour. So try to get in and out a little bit as opposed to keeping it there for an hour. So the Football Analytics Show is my podcast.
All right. Again, Football Analytics Show for that, and thepowerrank.com to find Ed's numbers and find Ed on X at the Power Rank. I am on X at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Again, back tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern on this FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page, talking NFL DFS Week 6, and at 4 o'clock Eastern, talking NFL Best Bets Week 6 with Dubs Anderson of FanDuel TV. Want to thank our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. Good luck with your Week 7 college football bets. bets. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down the NFL. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.